We are looking forward to being able to present to you a very good webinar here today. Okay, this is MidAmerica Global Ventures, and with us today is Simone Williams from Williams Global Law. We'll be presenting a lot of great information. Simone?
Hello, everyone.
And then also Beatriz, Perez, Perazzo, who most of you know, or many of you know, and she will be also presenting later on.
She's a celebrity.
Hello. Hello to everybody.
Yes. So we have everyone on mute except for the speakers, and Peter is controlling that, just so you know. Okay? Very good. So let's start out, because today's presentation, what we want to do is to present and go back to some of the basics of the EB5 program. And then we're going to move through that into Simone's portion, which is really what's happening today and what are the immigration matters associated with this. So the regional centers that we have, we are sponsoring the projects and moving those forward. And Simone is the one who is helping to then, with the applicants, to be able to help with the immigration issues. So she has been doing this for a long time, and she's well regarded within the EB5 industry. So we're very pleased to be able to have her as part of this team in presenting today. So first, I have to read a disclaimer. So, no portion of this presentation shall be considered an offer or solicitation to invest in any security and does not form any part of any solicitation or offering that may exist now or in the future. The content of this presentation is provided for general information purposes only, is not intended to solicit the purchase of securities or to be used as immigration, investment, or tax advice. Security offering, if any, will only be made pursuant to exemptions from registration requirements set out in applicable securities laws. The content of this presentation is qualified in its entirety by any offering, memorandum, and related operating agreement that may exist now or in the future. Okay, that's what I had to read. Thank you. On to next slide. Okay. So the purpose of EB5 is to promote foreign investment and job creation. And with that, this program is monitored by the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. It's been placed under that entity, which is part of the Department of Homeland Security. It's meant to have individuals be able to make investment into U.S. projects. The EB5 immigration investors are helping to develop projects that create U.S. jobs. So their money is going to go into a project when that project is going to create a certain amount of jobs. You'll see later on, we have 10 jobs are the minimum that have to be created for each investor. Can we go back to the previous slide? Okay. And then EB5 investors typically are motivated by getting the green card or their permanent residency. So, Peter? Can we go back to the slide? There we go. Okay, good. So with that, they're motivated by the green card, not necessarily the return on the investment of the project, because for us to be able to keep the pricing and all that we are lending the money or investing the money into the project, we need to have something that is going to be a return on investment or a rate that the developers are going to find competitive. The amounts are $800,000 minimum for a rural or targeted employment area. and the other is $1,050,000 US dollars required for outside the rural or TEA. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so these are the people that are involved here. You can see Beatriz's name, my name, and we have Peter as handling Africa and Middle East, Wan Yin, China, as part of our investor relations group. So you can see this territory here, the counties in Ohio that are in blue is our territory of where we have our projects and where we sponsor projects for the EB5 project. Our professional team is most important. Williams Global Law is our preferred immigration counsel. We use Saul Ewing in order to do a lot of the securities work, the offering work, the private placement memorandums, the loan documents, anything else that is needed. Baker Tilly, the international accounting firm, does the business plans and economic analysis. And we also have them doing the funds management that tracks all of the funds coming into the project. It's very important that we know exactly how the funds are flowing through the project. Next slide. Mag Ventures, we can invest in any variety of real estate projects or other types of projects, but for the most part, we're going to be focused on real estate projects because we want to be able to focus on projects that are going to be lower risk, and therefore we're going to see a return of the investor's capital back. And so you can see on projects that we have right now, we have a multifamily apartment complex, we have an office building, and we have also an industrial warehouse. But we see oftentimes hotels are being done, medical facilities or hospitals, or mixed-use real estate development. The job creation is the methodology behind that goes to both direct and indirect, and it is done overall by a economic model. And Mag Ventures itself has funded 6 projects and helped to facilitate more than $181 million of investment of EB5 funds. And that has created more than 3,800 jobs according to the economic model. Next slide. So the intermediary responsibilities for those that are doing the intermediary is to really help the investors in their area. One, get introduced to the program. Secondly, to really understand the program, so to provide education, marketing materials, other information that particular investor might need. The intermediary process is done through an affiliate company that we have, Global Network Alliance, that runs alongside of the regional center, and we provide information and all for that investor. One, through hard copy, secondly, through Dropbox access, or the intermediary might pass along that information through email. So in looking at this, we need to understand who is getting the information. You need to understand as the intermediary and the investor, the point of contact, so that we have good information flow. What's important in this is to, one, understand generally the securities laws in your territory. So as you're making presentations, you understand the issues surrounding that. And then secondly, in looking at the process, that the intermediaries can help in making sure to gather some of the forms and other information that might be needed in assistance with the immigration attorney. Next slide. The investor, very important that the investor must be truthful throughout the process in talking about source of funds, and Simone will go over that a little bit later. But they don't necessarily have to be a qualified investor, but it depends on where they're located. Again, we'll go over that a little bit later. They must be truthful about their background, their occupational background, that there's no criminal background there. And also, we want to make sure that they understand and have read the information and have looked at the project information so that they are truly informed. We are here to answer any questions about any projects, so this is a very important part of it. And again, one of the key one of the key benchmarks that you have to hit is to create a minimum of 10 jobs, and that is so important. And again, we can demonstrate that through the different reports and filings that we have. Next slide. So what happens is your investment is made into a new commercial enterprise. We'll see a slide on that in a moment. And once the funds have been invested and the application is filed, which is called an I-526E, and Simone will mention that a little, or talk a little bit about that more later. That's filed with USCIS. The process begins for your conditional residency, conditional visa. And what we'd see is maybe about 12 months for that to be approved. The conditional visa can include a spouse or partner and unmarried dependent children for as long as they remain under 21 years old. It cannot include the investor's parents, siblings, ex-spouses, anyone else, just the core family. And then upon the creation of first approval of this conditional visa, and then proof that the jobs have been created, another form is filed, the I-29 form that seeks the permanent green card, so to take off the conditions of the job creation. Next slide. Keep in mind, the USCIS will deny permanent residency if the applicant has not been truthful. And that investment, if it's been made, needs to remain in place until the project is liquidated out or repaid. These EB5 monies are repaid by the owner. And another question that we often receive is, does the investor need to purchase a home or permanently reside in the United States? And the answer is no, but you do have to reside in the United States for certain periods of time. The minimum investment must be made if you're using a regional center into a qualified project. That's where we end up submitting our projects into USCIS for their approval. If you are looking to do some type of investment, whether it's a condo somewhere or whatever, it doesn't have a qualified project, that does not count toward the investment. And then, as I mentioned before, the investment here is going to receive a low return for the investor because what you're looking for is the green card and not necessarily a real estate project that's market driven. Next slide. So you can see when I mentioned the new commercial enterprise, Mag Ventures puts the money in, the EB5 investors put their money in as the limited partner, and that money is then lent into the borrower or the job creating entity, the JCE. And then as repayments are made, that comes back through the lender and then back up through the Mag Ventures and back into the escrow account, any capital contribution. The next slide. And so this is simply, I won't go into the detail, but we show different phases of how we review a deal. And before we go ahead and sponsor a deal, we want to make sure that it is low risk. We've gone through and done all of our analysis on it, and we understand the process and we work through and we sign an LOI with the particular developer for the project and the amount of the slice of the equity, and then we will go ahead and proceed with any of the offering documents after that point in time. Next slide. So just a few things to be aware of. The processing times for Latin American investors is really good right now. There really isn't backlog. So you will see very good processing times. Now, our project that we've talked about before, the Worthington Gateway, that's a non-TEA, it's $1,050,000 investment. The processing times on that we expect will be good because the project has been approved by USCIS. So there is no project approval needed or review when the I-526E is being reviewed, other than they know that it's been approved. Then secondly, the project is fully completed, so there's no construction risk. Third, project is fully leased at this point in time. So different entities are doing their tenant improvements and moving in. So the project overall, we expect that sometime over the next 3 to 4 years, we'll be in a position of stabilization and be able to either refinance or sell out, and that's when the investors would see their money coming back in. Other trends we're seeing is an increased number of rural projects. These are primarily, though, for Chinese and Indian investors because since the RIA legislation, it allows, in 2022, it allows for faster processing for certain rural projects, which is important to the backlog of the Chinese and Indian investors. And we're seeing that attract some investment. But overall, the popularity of the program continues to be very strong through this time period. Next slide. So just want to remind you that this is a job creation program, and it's an investment program. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we are giving investors transparency as we're presenting regional center projects. You have all of the information in front of you, and we are able to provide you with all the detail, answer questions, whatever is necessary. When you receive your conditional residency, you have the same rights to travel, to residency, to working rights of a permanent green card holder. You just have to go through the process of demonstrating that the jobs have been created. And so we expect around 1 year for an investor to receive their conditional residency. Could be faster, could be a little slower, but it's right around that time. And one of the ways that you can look at this is that if there's improved job opportunities in the United States, any cost that you have today, you can make up for that cost many times over by going ahead and moving forward with the program and becoming part of the U.S. economy. And we are seeking always low risk projects. So our goal is to return 100% of your capital contribution. Next slide. So thank you for listening to my part of the program. And I'd like to now introduce Simone Williams, who is the founder, lead attorney on Williams Global Law, located in Washington, D.C.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Ralph, and welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome. And super excited to be here today to present and to give you information about the EB5 program. I've been doing this specifically EB5 and investment visas for 15 years and as an immigration attorney for over 20 years. So I'm super excited to be here today to share more about the program. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides with you. So I'm here, I'm an immigration attorney, specializing in EB5 practice and immigration law, business immigration specifically. We run a business boutique law firm in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. And we've represented investors from all over the world, including Latin America. I have had this law firm for 10 years, but before that, I was general counsel to an EB5 regional center, where we advised a green tech startup on EB5 capital raises, where we raised over $100 million from investors from China. And before that, I worked 8 years as a senior associate at Baker McKenzie, and that's a leading international law firm in the U.S. I'm also currently the co-chair of the International Business Committee at the Washington, D.C. Chamber of Commerce, where we've hosted investors from many parts of Latin America, including Brasilia. We just had a recent delegation from Brasilia. So super happy to be here today. These are a few of my awards. So just to let you know what I've done in the industry and that I continue to participate in to be part of the dialogue for EB5, including being on the policy committee for the Invest in the United States, which is the leading trade organization that represents the EB5 Regional Center program. Hopefully I'm not talking too fast. I know that some people, English is not their first language, so I'll try to go a bit slower. So the purpose of this presentation is really to talk about EB5 and also the gold card. I'm wearing gold today, so you'll remember. But so what is the gold card and how does it compare to the EB5 program? And is it going to actually replace the EB5? Because we know, and Ralph talked about, you're making an investment. You're making an investment that's going to last at least a few years. You want to make sure that it's stable and that you will get the money back, but you want to make sure that you're investing in a stable program. So we want to talk about and address the issues and the challenges that you may be thinking about considering EB5. And finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about the source of funds, because the EB5 program is about an investment in the U.S. and authorized projects like with Ralph's project. And it's very important. In fact, the most critical item is that you show your source of funds and they're lawfully sourced and we can trace it. So that's why it's important to work with an attorney to help you to document all of that. So what is the gold card? I'm sure everyone's read about it. It's in the news all the time. You're hearing about it. One thing I want to explain to you is that President Donald Trump does approve and support investment immigration, and that includes the EB5. So, you know, I know that there's been news and you don't know what to believe, but investment immigration has very much been part of the U.S. immigration program since 1990, and it's really here to stay. The gold card, a lot of immigration attorneys, including myself and on the Capitol Hill, do really think that it's just an addition to the existing EB5 program. The gold card is aimed at ultra high net worth individuals. You know, the requirement is $5 million, as you might have heard, but it's very important to note that there is no current legislation or regulations that exist to implement this proposal. So, you know, with the United States, everything has to go through a legislative process. That includes going through Congress. So this proposal is simply just a proposal and has not become law yet. In contrast, the EB5 program, as I mentioned, has been in the U.S. legislation since 1990, so very long time. Right now, the investment amount is either $800,000 or $1,050,000, as with the project that Ralph discussed. And it basically is a direct route to get U.S. permanent residency. And that's a permanent residency, initially conditional, but really permanent residency that leads to a green card as well as U.S. citizenship. And the requirements is that you invest through a regional center or even create your own business, which is a lot of work and probably not recommended for most people. And that you create 10 full-time jobs, and the investment has to be sustained in the project for a certain period of time. So we'll go to the next slide. So what are the differences? I just have the slide here to explain the differences between the EB5 and the gold card. You have 800,000 to 1,050,000 to $5 million. If you're investing in a regional center, the role is passive. So you could live anywhere in the United States. You don't have to live in the same area as the EB5 project, but with the gold card, we assume it's passive. We really don't know. It hasn't been clearly defined yet. Obviously, I explained the job creation component. The most important thing too is that the jobs are actually created, which Ralph's project, if you're interested, will provide you with an economic report that's been verified and approved by USCIS that explains how the jobs are created, and that in fact, I think in this project, the jobs have already been created, so will be attributed to you already. So that's very, very key when you're deciding on whether to invest in a project, the stability of the project, because everybody's about, one, my clients, of course, you want a stable project. Two, that the money will be returned to you per the terms of the agreement. And three, of course, that you get your permanent residency. The immigration status for the gold card hasn't been defined, but we assume it's obviously you're also going to get a green card. It's not going to be a direct route to citizenship. If you've heard that, that's just not the case. And so that's that. Strength and limitations. So we know the EB5, it's well established, structured, been in the U.S. EB5 immigration system for many, many years. It provides a direct route to getting a U.S. permanent residency for yourself and for children under the age of 21 and your spouse. The gold card obviously targets high, ultra wealthy investors. And it's still conceptual. There's been no legal framework to our knowledge. There's been no legislation that has been proposed to implement the gold card. It's literally just a proposal and a framework. You may have heard that there's a website and there's thousands of people that have been registered. I could register, my parents could register. That just says that people want to know more about the program. It does not you're not qualified. You don't have to have a certain net worth to register. It's just literally showing how many people may be interested in more information. And there's a lot of people interested, of course. As far as actuality, some are predicting maybe 1,000 people may be able to afford to do this at the end of the day. The gold card, it's not as many people as you might have heard in the news. As I mentioned, it's very, very unlikely in our immigration attorney circles, Congress, that the EB5 will be replaced by the gold card. It's really most likely going to complement the EB5 rather than compete directly, because there's just two different, avenues, paths, types of investors, interest in terms of how many people could actually afford it. And it's just, there's so much support. I'm in DC, I work and meet with congressmen. There's so much support for the EB5 program from all Democrats and Republicans that would be very hard for them to get an approval to basically replace the EB5 program. As I mentioned, no legislation has been introduced. And just to give you a little background about the legislative process, so for the gold card to actually take place, it has to go through the Congress and legislation. There is a process in the United States, and it does take some time. So a bill has to be introduced and passed and voted upon. They have to develop it and implement it. And normally when new rules come into play, you're looking at maybe 12 to 24 months. So on the other hand, EB5 already enjoys strong regulatory support and Congress support. So you just have to understand there is a process in place. And I'm going to talk a little bit about executive orders and whether the gold card could just take place because of an executive order. I'll get to that slide in a moment. It's in my professional opinion, EB5, if you're looking to get an expedited way to a green card in 12 months, is the most accessible fastest way to get that, and also to cover yourself and your families, because the investment amount, everybody is covered under your family. As Ralph was mentioning, your spouse and your children, not your parents. Unfortunately, once you become a citizen, you could apply for your parents, but at least you can apply.
Short-term pots, right?
Hello?
Remember when we were doing that in the
I think
past?
somebody has to go on mute. Yeah, there we go. So there we go. Okay. I do want to address just the stability of the program again, as an attorney, just because I think a lot of investors may be a little bit gun shy to really proceed because they think it might be going away. So as I mentioned, it was EB5, just a little background, it's a statutory program. That means that it's codified in the statute. So it can't just go away unless it's been repealed or amended and by a vote of Congress. It's been here for since 1990, and there's been, so many things have happened. President Trump has, already been president, and it's still remained as part of the U.S. immigration system. As far as executive orders are concerned, they cannot repeal federal law. Okay. He can, through an executive order. That means that even with an executive order, EB5 cannot go away because it's part of a federal statutory law. It is not a discretionary program. For instance, we have one example of with President Trump trying to repeal something called the DACA program. That's an immigration program. Undocumented individuals in the U.S. and courts had blocked attempts to end it because they have to go through a lawful process. That's just the way the United States is. That's part of being part of the American dream, understanding that we have due process, we have systems in place, that things just can't happen like that. I just want to explain to you that EB5 had an overhaul as well in 2022. It just passed with tremendous bipartisan support from Democrats and Republicans, and it was reauthorized until September 30th, 2027. So just want you to know that that means that, there's a limit, but it was supported. I mean, in terms of the ability, the program has to be reauthorized again eventually, but right now it's available and open for investors. As I mentioned, bipartisan support from Democrats, Republicans, local and state leaders. It's widely used to fund massive infrastructure projects, real estate projects that are creating so many jobs. Senators are just not willing to let this program go. It does so much good for the economy and for communities that really need the funding. I just want to explain a little bit of the champions of EB5. We have Senator Schumer from New York. He's a Democrat. He's a strong EB5 advocate. Senator Graham, he's also an advocate, a Republican from South Carolina. And Senator Corrin, he's a Republican from the state of Texas. They're always pushing and protecting EB5. So we have some really strong support from Congress for EB5. This is a quote that I recently read, I think 5 days ago, was published in an article. Unlike temporary immigration programs that can be revoked by executive order, the EB5 program is part of U.S. federal law and was reauthorized by Congress through 2027. So it's not something that can go away like that through an executive order. Just so you understand this, I'm emphasizing this because of the stability that you have now. Through 2027 at least, and that it's a lot, and it provides you with this understanding that you have political support, congressional support, and another thing with the new rules, it has a grandfathering provision. Okay, what does that mean? That means if anything should happen or anything should change, you are protected because you invested while the program was authorized. So this is in the statute itself. So as far as it going away because you filed and it's something happens, it's just not going to happen. It cannot happen. It's written in the law, and you'll be protected. I think I did talk about that there's media coverage, but of course, there's, as far as directly replacing the program, it's highly unlikely. I'll go into the EB5 and how it works. Ralph did cover this. You file something called an I-526E. Immigration attorney assists you with filing that with USCIS. That's the immigration agency. And there's a little rule that if you actually are in the U.S., you can file something called a concurrent I-485. That's available if you have a child that's going to school here, or that you happen to be in the U.S. on another visa status. And why that's sometimes attractive is that all of your immigration process is conducted in the United States and not overseas at the embassy. As well, you will get immediate work authorization and travel authorization while your case is pending. So what does this mean? You can go up and down, move forward, work immediately. These for within 60 to 90 days, these work permits and travel permits are being approved while your case is actually pending. So that's also a very positive thing. After you get approved, you receive a conditional green card for 2 years. And then after the 2 years, we have to file something to remove the conditions. So let me explain this a little bit more if I didn't explain it in the other slide. No, I didn't. So once you get the approval of your I-526 and you get your green card, you have something called conditional status, right? But you are still considered a green card holder. You have all the benefits of a green card holder, and you will always remain to keep the benefits until you have to file something called the 829 to remove the conditions, but you always remain a green card holder. Like, your green card status doesn't go away. When we file the 829, we have to prove job creation. And the beauty about projects like Ralph's is that the jobs have already been created. They could actually prove that and be attributed to you as an investor. So from a perspective of like planning ahead and thinking, okay, will I be able to remove the conditions? Yes, you will be able to, because there are projects out there that the jobs have already been created. While the 829 is filed and pending, you keep your green card status. The only way your green card status is removed is if the 829 is denied. Again, the probability of that happening is very minimized when you're working with a project that the jobs have been created. And in fact, if you're one of the, and also with projects that are a little bit smaller, they don't have a ton of spots available, that in fact the jobs will be secure. So those are the types of things that you have to think about when you're choosing a project, that there's a security with the jobs. You can never guarantee it, of course, but particularly if the jobs have already been created, that is a super plus. It's a very good thing. And then also that you're working with a project with a good track record and, doing like the risk analysis, as Ralph had already explained with their due diligence on doing this. Okay, let's go into the source of funds requirements. This is a key source, component and requirement for the EB5 to work. We talked about you selecting the project. Of course, you want to select an amazing project like Ralph's, but the source of funds requirement is so critical. And for us to get the case approved, me as an attorney will look at your source of funds and determine how can we show your source of funds. I mean, sometimes you have a source of funds and I'll say that's not the best way to prove it. Let's think about ways to prove it that will meet the requirements and get your case approved. So there's a way that we have to go through that kind of analysis, but you definitely have to show your source and you have to show how the money was transferred and the lawful path of how it came into the United States. In terms of the sources of funds, there's so many ways that you can show your source. You could show salary, proceeds from sale, proceeds from stock. You can even get a loan from a bank. You could get a loan from a friend. You can get a gift from parents or friends or family members, or you can have all of the above. So as long as you can prove the source of funds from all of these different sources, 800,000 or $1,050,000, that's completely acceptable. And in terms of the evidence to prove that, depending on what the source is, like if it's a salary, we would have to show your bank statements and your pay slips. If it's you sell your property, we have to show the proof of the sale and that the funds were transferred into your account and things like that. But I mean, that's again something that you work on with me directly to kind of figure out and provide you with exactly the details. This is just a quick overview at this point. This is just a listing of things that you need to show. One thing I wanted to note was the tax returns. Right now, if you don't get whoever is the source of the fund, so if it's you or a family member or you get a loan from a personal friend or a gift, there's now a new requirement that they have to provide their tax returns, or you have to provide your tax returns for at least 7 years. But I'm going to talk to you about how we could, if you don't have that evidence, how we can overcome and still meet the requirements. Obviously, this is the listing here of evidence that you can prove. As I mentioned, the tax returns, if it's not available, we can provide an explanation or alternative documentation. So that's not a problem. Although it is a requirement, there's always ways to like overcome it so that we can prove the 7 years. We understand that many Latin American countries have do not require returns below income thresholds and exempt foreign source income from reporting. So we just have to provide some type of official support to explain why the returns are unavailable. All right. So, for instance, I've listed here some examples of countries: Panama, Paraguay, Costa Rica, and what we could submit in lieu of tax returns. If you don't have, did you want to wait for the questions at the end, or do we have a question now?
We have some questions, but let's wait until the end. Yes.
Yeah, we'll wait till the end.
Okay, great. Thank you. So in terms of the alternative evidence, you could do affidavits, certified income statements, employer letters, and things like that to basically explain if you don't have the full tax returns for 7 years. That's the only thing is tax returns are only needed if the source of funds are coming directly from you, or the source of funds comes directly from a person who's giving you a gift. Because sometimes you get source of funds like a loan from a bank. And of course, the USCIS, the immigration agency, is not requiring that the bank provides 7 years of income tax. If it's a entity like a bank, a financial provider, things like that, they obviously are exempt from that. As I said, you could provide an affidavit. We'll need an affidavit. We'll need a letter from a local CPA or tax lawyer or accountant, and just proof that you actually earned the money for the 7 years. So we work with you very closely. I mean, I've worked with thousands of investors at this point, and there's so many different types of source of funds and so many ways to prove it. And we kind of delve into it, work with you to figure out the cleanest, easiest way to prove it that will meet the requirements and allow you to get approved quickly. This is just another slide. So let me talk a little bit about EB5 process at a glance, how it works, and the timeline, because again, that's probably one of another very popular question, like how long is it going to take? All right. The first thing is, once you hire the law firm, right, you hire me or any immigration attorney that's expert in this, because not everybody is, because EB5 is very, very complicated. So you need an expert. You have to work with us to figure out your source of funds, and we'll provide you with a document checklist. And then once we get everything we've requested, we can file your case like within weeks, essentially. You'll have to sign some forms, and we'll prepare affidavits or supporting documents for you to review and sign. But once we get everything that we've requested and prepare the documentation, it takes weeks to file. Once we file with USCIS, that's the immigration agency. I'm going to just say USCIS from now on, because I think you guys, I've said that enough. It's the immigration agency. Once we file with USCIS, it takes 8 to 12 months to get approved for the I-526. That's the petition. That's the one that gives you the access to get a green card. So once that's approved, that's the first process. That's the first process. The second process is consular processing. You have to go through, they have to do security checks. You have to provide police certificate. You have to provide your medical examination. All of these things to prove that, you don't have any security issues with the U.S. And that is conducted at the embassy if you are outside of the U.S. If you do it in the United States, then, like I said, it's the concurrent processing, that happens in the U.S. But in any event, that takes about 2 to 3 months of time. And once we provide them with your police certificate, and all of your civil documents, your birth certificate, all of your records, then they will approve and say everything is complete, and then they will request for you to go through a medical examination. And then you have to get a medical examination to make sure that you have the right vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. Once that's complete, then once your documents are all complete, then they will schedule you for the interview, and then they'll tell you to do the medical exam. As I said, that could take between 4 to 6 months. Once you have to get the interview scheduled, then you have 6 months to enter the United States. You have to enter within 6 months. Once you get your passport stamped, then you could leave. Once you come into the United States within 6 months, that's when you get your green card. And that green card comes between 1 to 3 months. And then from the date of you entering the U.S. and getting your green card, that's after the 2-year conditional period of residency. Again, it's a conditional status, but you never lose your green card status unless we file your 829 and you can't prove the job. So you always really keep your green card status. In fact, once you get your green card, the conditional status, that's when the timing for citizenship begins. That's the clock for citizenship. So once you get your green card, after 5 years, you could apply for citizenship. Okay, so the last component of this presentation, I wanted to quickly give you some real life success stories of examples of actual investors and how we were able to prove their source of funds and how it works. So this investor sold inherited land, but lacked the formal sales contract and title chain. We were able to provide the notarized affidavits, the tax payment history for the property, and the utility bills and the buyer deposit records to prove that he in fact sold the property, to show that the proceeds came to him, he owned the property, and that was the source of his funds. Now the family's living in the U.S. under work and travel authorization because they had an E2 visa here in the U.S. and they did concurrent status. Brazil, crypto and stock investments. Sometimes people talk about crypto. Can we use crypto? As long as we have screenshots, brokerage records, tax filings, and detailed explanation letters from financial advisors, we can do it. We just need to prove the source and prove it very, very clearly. Finally, Colombia. The investor received funds from father's business but lacked audited records. We'll need the corporate registry proof, notarized distribution agreements, bank transfers, family affidavits, and really try to document all of the source of funds if you don't have the records, the financial statements and records. It doesn't have to be audited, by the way, but if it is audited, that's even better. And the case was approved within 12 months. As I mentioned, you absolutely need an attorney for this. It is a very complicated process. I just went through a quick overview, and happy to answer the questions. And obviously, but you have to have complete and accurate documentation. The lawful source requirement is critical for you to get an approval. We obviously have to vet the project compliance and investor protections, which Ralph had an overview with his project. And just to help you strategically time your filings so you get optimal processing and approval, and hopefully without something called a request for evidence. That's the goal, that we file a complete petition without the government asking us for more evidence to prove it. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope this was helpful, and I very much look forward to all of your questions. And here's my email, my website. You could look me up, and that's that.
Okay. Thank you, Simone. Thank you.
Absolutely.
What a
Okay,
wonderful,
I wasn't going too fast.
what a lot, great information that you provided us there. And you can see she's a wealth of information and experience in being able to bring immigration law into your specific situation. So Simone and I have now presented all of the facts before you, and to bring home our closing arguments and bringing home a decision is our international attorney, Beatriz Perez Perazzo. And she is ready to tell you her thoughts about the EB5, as she has had several years of experience in this now. Go ahead, Beatriz.
Okay, hi, good afternoon, everybody. So, buenas tardes. So, well, there has been a very important explanation. We went over all the EB5 formalities with our immigration attorney that had all the many questions and conversation that I had with many of the people that are present today in this webinar had been already explained and very well explained by the attorney, but also Ralph. At the beginning, you explained about the Working to Gate project and you know how we have been moving in the regional center. So I only have to say at this moment, after those great interventions that you had and all the good explanation, that I will really request a question. So what is your plan? So you have to really now be concentrated. What is your green card plan at this moment? So first, there are some elements that we need to consider. Clarity. Be clear on what you really want. Clarity is the single and most important quality moving forward. So be clear. Consider that EB5, as we have learned with this explanation, EB5 is the best alternative to the green card at this moment. That takes us to something in addition to something else. That is opportunity. And opportunity is related to the time. So time is of the essence. So at this moment, really, we need to consider the clarity. This is the best alternative. We have an opportunity, and the opportunity is related to the time, and time is of the essence. So establish, as we had been learned during the 90s by the Congress, this is a program. It was established by the Congress as U.S. economic growth through investment. So many questions are, always asking us, we are immigrants, so is any problem because, maybe, we are considering only immigrant. No, there is a magic word here. It is a project to stimulate the growth through investment. But in this kind of program, you have to consider that it's an investor program. So the magic word is investor. You are considered an investor. This EB5 immigration program, as was explained also, was reauthorized back in 2022 and is both certain and legally sound, and is back in the Reform and Integrity Act, the REA Act. So, and as also we already went over that, it is protected or supported, I would say supported by the grandfathering provision stated by the Congress, and it's essentially stating that that means that once the investor submit the I-526 petition, start the process, and follow up all the formalities, this program, that person is going, or that investor, because we are talking about investor, is going to be really protected. So it's not going to be terminated now for any change, because that grandfathering protection will back up all the program. So times changes. We know, and I'm telling this because I received, several questions and calls from, so the intermediaries and people that want to invest, and they say, yeah, but time is changing. No, time changes, but liberty in the U.S. always remains. The opportunity has never left the U.S. So as an example, we are talking together about what are we discussing together? We are discussing about a program, legal immigration encouraged by a program that is the investment opportunity through a grandfathering protection, and is as we have been learning from our immigrant attorney, is protected by the Congress, by the law. So despite all the challenges, the United States remains the largest economy in the world, reaching maybe the 27% according to the Fund Society. So the country is known as a favorable environment for innovation, and that is what we have now. We have been going through all the explanation, and we are really at this moment ready to make our decision. So what is your decision? We are ready to move forward. It's now the moment to be moving forward. Make the decision. Time is of the essence. Follow the formality and have your immigration attorney to lead you through your process. That is the best recommendation. Rely in my venture regional center, but because we are offering projects that are extremely regulated by the USCIS. And finally, we ensure that the investment offering complies with the federal and state security laws. So it's your turn now. Let's move and invest.
Wow. Thank you, Beatriz. That's a great summary of what we have been trying to say here, that now is the time.
Now is the time.
It's not in the future, it's now. And so many have looked at the projects that we have, and those projects have progressed exactly as we told you they would. And so that's because we've chosen good developers and we've chosen good projects. And those projects will, in the future, return 100% of the investor capital. That's what we are looking for, because we want to have, and we keep in mind that the investor is our first priority in making sure they get their money back. So I'm going to pivot for a moment and go to some questions. A couple of the questions we have here are really questions for Simone. So in this, Simone, let's say I am an applicant and I have a spouse and also some dependents, but how do I qualify that that person is my spouse? Or what if I'm not married and they're my partner? And what if there are not only my natural children, but stepchildren involved? Who all could be part of that application?
Very, very great question. So let's start from, the short answer is it's only immediate family, and immediate family for U.S. immigration purposes is your spouse and your children under the age of 21. Now, what children does that include? That includes stepchildren, that includes adopted children. Okay, but they all have to be under the age of 21. Once they get 21, that's it. I do want to explain that if we're able to file your application before they turn 21, even if the case is pending, they will still be included in your process. So as long as we get them before they turn 21, you're fine. But once they turn 21, that's it. I was explaining to you that if you become a citizen, then you're eligible to file for your parents immediately, and then you're eligible to file for your siblings. that takes a long time. Just to let you know, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna tell you that's not gonna take long. The sibling category is very long, but the parents is immediate. So if you're able to, once you get your green card, you're here for 5 years, you can file for your parents, or you can have your parents do EB5 if you really wanted them to come. So, but anyways, it's family. Family includes the spouse and the children under age of 21.
Okay. A second question for you, Simone, is what residency requirements does a green card holder need to consider once they have their green card? In other words, how many months a year and all do they need to be residing in the U.S.? And then as a U.S. resident, what kind of taxes are they going to have to expect to pay?
So, unfortunately, I cannot comment on the tax question. I have a tax attorney that I could refer you to, or a CPA. The tax question is a little complicated. You are, unfortunately, once you become, you might have heard, once you become a green card holder, you are subject to worldwide taxation. That is a U.S. law, unfortunately. But we know that there's ways to structure your taxes. I'm not a tax attorney, so I can't tell you how to do that. But there's trust and things like that. So talk to, I'll always advise and provide you with information on the tax side, because I do have great advisors and attorneys that can help you on that side. As far as coming here to the U.S. and what is your requirement to live in the U.S. once you become a permanent resident. The rule is that you should come to the U.S. at least once every 6 months to maintain your status. What does that mean? You could come for a couple of weeks, then you can leave, come back a couple of weeks in the following 6 months. It doesn't mean that you have to live here without breaks all the time. You do have to maintain your permanent residency. That also means that you buy a house and you're paying taxes and you're doing the things that you're showing that you actually live here. But there's lots of people and a lot of investors that obviously have residences all over the world. The U.S. happens to be one of them. They don't live here all the time. That's not the requirement of the rule. But you can't be outside of the U.S. My recommendation, the rule, the black and white rule says longer than a year. I'm more conservative and recommend, 6 months, not longer than 6 months. Just come here at least once every 6 months, really, is my recommendation.
Mm-hmm. I think there's plenty to see and do in the U.S., so not hard to come every 2 weeks or so.
Right.
Another question that came up, and I think we already addressed it, is the investor receiving back their investment. And yes, the investor receives back 100% of their capital contribution. Now, there are fees associated, of course, with the application, with also the administrative costs for the regional center. But the initial, let's say the capital contribution is $1,050,000. That's that the person would get back. They also will receive during that time, albeit small, some percent, for instance, in Worthington project that we have, Worthington Gateway, we offer 2.2% return to the investor. So over a period of time, that will help to offset some of their costs associated with the administrative fee, legal fees, and the filing fees for USCIS. Okay. And then one of the other questions that came up, back to you, Simone, is verifying that someone has a non-criminal status, or that they do, but how does USCIS go about doing that activity?
Well, that's why part of the due diligence on the embassy side and even in the U.S. is that you do have to provide a police certificate for every country that you've lived in for longer than 6 months. So if you have committed a crime, it's going to show in the police, the criminal background check. However, again, you'll have to talk to me about that, because we work with clients that may have had issues in the past. And there's waivers and things like that we can get obtained for them if that's required, if that's needed. It really depends what it is. and how long ago it was. Of course, it has to be disclosed, and it will be disclosed in the police certificate when you have to provide the criminal background checks and stuff for your countries.
Typically, what is the look back period for that?
There's no look, it's all time, essentially. I mean, if you committed a crime when you're 16, you still have to disclose it.
I don't think they kept records when I was 16 on those things. I don't know.
It's
That's a
on the
long time
form,
ago.
you just have to, it's more of a disclosure.
It was a long time ago, Ralph.
Many moons ago. But no, basically you have, it's a disclosure, Ralph. So on the form, it asks you if you've ever. And as we always, as Ralph mentioned in his presentation, you have to be honest. Or whatever, be honest with me at the least, but we have to disclose everything to USCIS, because if once you do something that even a mistake and it's not disclosed, that's when you can get into some real problems. So we have to make sure that we're honest and transparent when we're filing these things. And that's part of the due diligence process on our side, that with the questionnaire that I provide to you, that you complete. And if there are problems that you've had, we have to make sure that we address it and take the right steps to make sure that you can utilize the EB5 program, because there's nothing worse that you invest and then it's down the road you realize you have a problem. So definitely those are the types of things we talk about before anything.
And a lot of times it depends upon what that conviction was for also, because not all convictions are necessary to disqualify you.
Of course, and to be honest with you, unless it's a felony, like something that's really, really bad, and even so, we know that you can get a waiver. It just depends how long, the nature of the offense, and all of that. We'll definitely disclose it. It's always within the discretion of the officer, but that's why we provide like the explanation and affidavits from your pastor, your priest, or that you're a great citizen, and all of that stuff is behind you.
Yes. So if you were a young troublemaker, don't worry. There could be some hope here for the program. Okay. So any other, I think that was the questions that we had in the chat, and we're already over our time. So again, I want to thank all of our participants for coming today. We have, of course, you know how to get a hold of either Beatriz or me or Simone, or I know that Cesar Lopez also invited many people. So we are looking forward to engaging you in further discussions. And as Beatriz said, the time is now, and we'd really like to see you investing in our project, which is the Worthington Gateway project, or any future projects we have. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.